there, Omaha. Welcome into another episode of Restaurant Hoppen. I'm your host, Dan Hoppen, and when she was in high school, my sister had a job decorating cakes for Hy-Vee, and there was a guy that she worked with who she kept telling me about. She's like, this guy is really cool, but he's also really, really talented at his job. And then in late 2022, this guy announced that he'd be opening his own cake shop, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. He's breaking out on his own. Little did I know that Dave Barry would soon become just like a cupcake sensation in Omaha. You won't say it, but I will say it. I think you're the cupcake king at the moment right now. This is Dave Barry. He's the genius behind Dave's Cakes of Omaha. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dan. It's a real pleasure to be here.
All right, I gotta start off with the most pressing question when it comes to cupcakes. I had this in my notes before I even started doing research, but I was happy when I started doing research. I found the answer, and it made me very happy because you agree with me. The proper way to eat a cupcake is fill in the blank.
Is to pull the bottom part off, swing it around to the top, make a little sandwich out of it, and indulge yourself. Now, that doesn't always work, Dan.
When there's a filling.
When there's a filling.
That's the only
That's a real mess.
Downside, yeah. But for non-filling cupcakes, making the cupcake sandwich.
The sandwich is the way to go.
Easily the way to go. And on January 25th, you posted a video on Facebook saying how to eat a cupcake, in which you did exactly that. And it made me so happy. I already was excited to talk to you, and then I was like, yes, this guy gets it. Why is that the best way to eat a cupcake?
Well, I have a beard and a mustache, and getting icing in my beard and my mustache just is... It's a no-go.
It's a bad time?
It's a bad time. The sandwich eliminates all of that, and it's easy to clean up.
Well, I would say even for beardless and mustacheless people, I don't want to get frosting all over my face. It's so much easier to just have it in that one compact form. So, anyway, that was the most important thing we have to talk about.
All right. I guess our work here is done.
We're done. That's the end of the podcast. No, we're just getting started. So if any point, listeners, if you're like, man, I got to check this place out, these cupcakes and cakes. I keep saying cupcakes, but it's cakes too. Sound amazing. Dave's Cakes of Omaha, located just off 144th and Q. It's a little tucked back, but if you use your GPS, you'll be able to find it. I've found it very easily. And orders can also be placed for cupcakes or custom cakes at davescakesofomaha.com.
Yep, or through Facebook Messenger.
Yeah,
hit us up through Facebook. We love it.
So many ways to do it. So I want to start off here. To you, what makes an elite cake or cupcake? Like when you bite in, what makes your eyes widen and make you go, oh, wow, now that's good cake?
Well, the crumb's got to be right. It's got to be the right density. I'm going to say the word that's going to irritate a lot of people. It's got to be moist.
Just go for it, yep.
It's got to be moist. And for me, there's a certain level of icing that you have to put on there that, well, let me just put it this way. Some people put way too much icing on a cupcake. It's more icing than cake. That's not a good thing. They're almost hiding the cake, and I think they're doing that intentionally. I don't put a whole lot of icing on there. It's enough to complement the cake itself, but it's not gonna stick to the roof of your mouth. It's gonna be a good time.
I kind of equate icing on a cupcake to toppings on a pizza, in which you can just throw a ton of stuff on a pizza and just cover up. Like what's really important and what makes great pizza is the dough and the sauce and the cheese. You have to have that great base. And you can throw barbecue sauce and all kinds of pepperoni and all kinds of meats and stuff on top of that and kind of mask what's really integral to the pizza. But at the heart of it, to really have great pizza, you have to have that great base. And it's the same with a cupcake. Yeah, you can throw a ton of sugary frosting on top of that cake, but unless it is truly great cake that is moist and tender and fluffy, yeah, you can have a good cake experience, but it's not going to be that, oh, wow, this is like an enlightenment almost.
Enlightenment, that's quite the word. Thank you.
So when you decided to open Dave's Cakes of Omaha, what were you hoping to bring to the scene where you were like, there's a lot of great bakeries around this city. I think I can bring something to fill this particular niche. What was that niche?
Well, I think the culture we're bringing is in the three pillars of my business. The three founding pieces to my business are quality, affordability, and a smile. They're the things I don't know that my competitors are doing in tandem. If they are, they're doing one or two of them. I don't think anybody's doing all three but me. So we're bringing that quality cupcake. We're bringing it at an affordable price. I mean, I'm $2 a cupcake. If you buy more than 6, you're getting them for less than $2 a cupcake.
Which is insane, by the way.
I'm a little crazy. And I'm always going to have a smile on my face. So my customers get that. They get all three of them. No one of those points is more important than the other. They all work together in harmony. And that's what I think we're doing that's bringing people in.
Now, I want to hit on the price point real quick, and this is something I almost never do in episodes, but with you, I mean, $2 for a cupcake. Like, yeah. When we're talking about, you can see, viewers, cupcakes of this size, these are big cupcakes. They're not little guys. If you go into a grocery store and get a cupcake like that, much less especially bakery, you're probably talking at least $3.50, $4, maybe even $5, and you're selling for $2. Why?
I've spent so many years making cakes and cupcakes for folks.
Almost 20.
Almost 20 years. And in that time, I can't tell you how many instances of families or mothers give me a call, wherever I've been working, and asking for a quote for however many cupcakes, whatever the size of cake it is. And I've had to give them a quote based on that particular owner's sensibilities. And I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody say, that's beyond my budget. And it kills me. It really does. Because cake, especially cupcakes, should not be a luxury item. And I want to make that accessible to everybody.
I love that.
Yeah.
And another thing that I just love about your philosophy, I found this quote in doing some research. You were talking about baking and making cakes, and you said, quote, "It gives me purpose. It's not a job. It's a passion. It's something I do for others to make other people happy." Now, I know being a baker is really hard. You can correct me if it's different for you, but usually it involves getting up, maybe even getting into the bakery at 3 or 4 in the morning, and you're basically on until the bakery closes, and then you got to clean things. I mean, it's a long day that starts very, very early. What is it about making cakes that you feel gives you purpose?
Having people come in to pick up their special orders, mothers of children, the kids themselves, when we present to them their order, whether it's cake, whether it's cupcakes, and the look on their faces when we present that to them is the world to me. It absolutely is. And seeing those smiles, building those relationships means so much to me. And like I said in that quote, it's a passion. It really drives me. And luckily, I've got a team on my staff that believes in that. And we are all in.
What's an example of that? Because I'm sure there's some that just pop right to the front of your mind of just, you came in, whether it was a kid, whether it was a parent, whoever, and just saw a creation that you had, and they were just, and their reaction just filled you with like a, yes, this is why I do this.
We just did a substantial cake. It was a superhero cake, and full bust, head and shoulders, and it was quite the accomplishment for the entire team. Cheyenne in particular did the finished decorating on that cake. Wonderful job. But the mom got in a little early, and I had to explain to her that the cake's not quite done yet, and this is pretty involved work. She got there a little early, and she literally stood by the window in front of Cheyenne's table and just watched and gawked and couldn't say enough great things. And I just stood there with her, and we watched together, just making Cheyenne really uncomfortable. We've got a little sign on the glass that says, "Don't tap the glass, you'll scare the decorators."
Nice.
But she got it done. We even added an inscription last minute. You know, we brought the cake out and said, hey, gosh, do you want something written on this? And the mom was like, yeah, we should do that. So we brought it back in, put it on the table, and she just raved, absolutely raved. It was a beautiful accomplishment for us, and we got a message from her later saying how much her child, and this was for like a 4 or 5 year old little girl, how much that cake meant to her and her family.
To just pull back the curtain for people, because I don't think most people understand just how intricate some of these cakes are. How long did that cake take to make?
That was probably a 5 or 6 hour job.
Yeah. On one cake.
On one cake.
That's no joke.
No, not at all.
That on top of the other custom orders you're doing, on top of the cupcakes you're making, on top of all just the managerial things that you have to handle as a boss. I mean, you're one cake, 6 hours.
Yeah.
But it's worth it.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's great. I absolutely love that. So there are some cupcake shops or bakeries that offer just a ton of flavors. I mean, you walk in there, you look at the pastry case, and you've got 20 different flavor options. Nothing against those places. I love having variety. But that's not you. You typically offer, usually, I would say 7 or 8, like standard flavors, and then a flavor of the week.
Sure.
What was your thinking behind kind of keeping that a little bit more concise, a little bit more limited?
That answer is going to be a little goofy.
Okay. I like goofy.
So when we were setting up the shop, we got the space, we were measuring things out and kind of looking at what we had in mind for the space itself. I originally wanted it to be a cake shop that did cupcakes. That was my vision. As it turns out, I'm a cupcake shop that does cakes. But with that first initial idea in mind, I got the small case for my cupcakes because I didn't think they were going to be as big a draw as our custom cakes would be. So I got the little 3.5, 4 foot case. And it just turns out I can fit in about 9 pans in there. And if I organize them a certain way, I can fit a 10th pan in there. So I had my 9 original flavors, and then I did a little shuffling. And I realized I could have a 10th flavor in there. So it dawned on me, why not just have a flavor of the week, rotate something out, build some excitement, generate some excitement for what's new and what's coming. And that's where we went. And like I said, we're now a cupcake shop that also makes cakes.
I want to talk about that flavor of the week because I went back and I looked, and I could list all of them. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to list some of the ones that I think are more interesting. Oreo, which we'll definitely talk about because that's one of the best sellers, but also French toast, churro, caramel apple pie, Boston cream, peanut butter and jelly, salted nut roll, and you even just for Easter 24, you did a Peeps cupcake. Where do you get the inspiration for these flavors?
That's really a team effort. We, as you can see, we like to have a lot of fun. If anybody who watches my social media knows that we're goofballs and we love to have some fun in the shop. We sit around working all day doing humdrum jobs. I'm hand scooping cupcakes one at a time to the tune of a lot. The girls are icing cakes and, doing dishes, cleaning, we're listening to music, and it just comes up in conversation. Hey, you know what would be good? What's that? Oh gosh, we got the churro cupcake. What if we just took that base and we made French toast out of it? That was Cheyenne. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Absolutely. Let's do it. We just need a maple buttercream. That's easy enough to do. We've got a great base. We can make a maple buttercream. And boom, it was good. It was really good. We have a shared kind of spreadsheet where we just keep adding flavors to it. And as we're going through the year, we just like, oh man, we got to get something new out there. We just go to the spreadsheet and then we start working on it.
So what's the R&D process look like once you, and I'm sure this differs from flavor to flavor because some, like the one you just mentioned, you just needed to tweak the churro recipe a little bit to transfer it to French toast. I'm sure there's somewhere you have to start from the ground floor and build it up. But in general, what is, once you decide, okay, this is going to be a flavor of the week coming up, what does it look like taking it from conception to it's in the case?
A few test batches is all it really takes. Cake, there's some bakers out there that are going to hate me, but cake is easy. Okay, once you get your dry down and your liquid levels set, it's just a matter of, most of the time, tweaking those liquid levels and substituting flavorings or, alcohol, like for my pink champagne, for some of that water, vanilla for some of the water for my vanilla cupcakes, and and so forth. Sometimes you're tweaking the dry within, like in the churro and the French toast, but it's a lot easier than you think, and it just takes a couple test batches to say, oh gosh, I really didn't dial in the flavor on that. We need to up the ante on this a little bit, which means we have to pull back on a little bit of that, and we can make it work. I know that we just we did for heavy brewing. We had a little partnership going with them, and we did cupcakes and brews.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great event, but one of the flavors we brought out for that was peach champagne. It was really good, the final product, but that had me just pulling my hair out, because I thought it was going to be as easy as my pink champagne, just substitute peach for the raspberry, and we got it. It wasn't. I probably went through about 7 test batches of that. I brought some to Heavy, and I was like, here's my peach champagne. We sat down, we ate it, we tried it with the beer, we both agreed, no, this isn't going to cut it. And we had to just go back to the drawing board and find those flavorings and, the fruit combinations to get it dialed in. And once we did, it was spectacular. But it's a Heavy Brewing exclusive, so you can only get it there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is that feeling like, especially with some of those more difficult flavors where it takes a little bit longer to figure it out? When you finally get it, what does that eureka moment feel like for you?
It's delicious. That eureka moment is just an explosion of flavor, and it's great. I've had a couple duds that I've shelved. I'm never going back to them. Never again. But to have something hit is a great feeling. I feel we were very fortunate in our early days at the shop that we hit on a lot of flavors kind of out the gate. But I had a kind of a core group of recipes that I was working on before I opened the shop. I spent about 6 months unemployed, making cupcakes for my neighbors and really dialing in those recipes. And like I said, cake is pretty easy. Once you get those core recipes dialed in, you can have some fun with those and expand your flavor profiles.
Now, I'm not going to debate you because you know far more about cake than I do, but I don't know if I would go so far to say cake is easy. I have no idea how to make cake, at least not good cake. I can take a box and mix some stuff with it and maybe make something. But when you talk about getting the dry and the wet and getting that balance, that is what is so important. And that's something that you developed over 20 years of doing this. When you were making your signature and like you said, you had that unemployed time where you're just making test batches, giving them to neighbors. How long did it take for you to figure out your exact balance and what was going to be a Dave's cake? Well,
I got to give a lot of credit to some of my teachers over the years.
Sure.
You brought up, I've been making cake for a long time. I've been making cake longer than like a couple of my staff members have been alive. So I got to credit some of my teachers. First and foremost, Ed Lefevre from Cupcake Island pretty much taught me everything I know about baking.
R.I.P. Cupcake Island.
I know. Wasn't that sad?
Place. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I spent a few years working under Ed. and kind of learning how to bake, how to kind of dial in a recipe. And well, the whole time I was their only decorator. So I was doing that, and then on Tuesdays I'd go make buttercream and help bake. And Wednesday through Saturday would just be in the trenches making cakes. But Ed was a great teacher. He's a great baker, good man. Yeah.
Now I got to ask you, before we get off the topic of cupcakes, I got to ask you about the signature. We were talking about this a little bit off the mics, but the Oreo cupcake has become, and for those watching, it's this bad boy right here, has become a bit of a cult legend, to the point where you said if you don't bring it back once a month, you fear for rioting.
Yes.
What is it? First of all, did you have any idea that this cupcake would take off the way that it has? And B, what is it about this cupcake that you think inspires such strong opinions about it?
People love Oreos.
Oreos are amazing.
They're one of the best cookies, if not up there. They're top tier. We knew out the gate that this was going to be a good one. Try it, and you come back to me and tell me that it's not a good one. We knew out the gate that it was going to be good, and we didn't realize how good. And I mentioned earlier, I only have 10 spots in my case. I've got that 10th spot is reserved for the flavor of the week. And oh boy, people tell me on the weekly basis that this cupcake needs to be permanent. And I tell them, no, I got other stuff coming. We gotta keep it fair. But it was so popular that I threw a little contest together. I forget what it was for. It might have been for followers. If we got to a certain number of followers, I was going to introduce something that we'd never introduced before, or number of cupcakes sold or something like that. But I had it in my head that we were just going to sell the fluff by itself because people love it. And we hit that mark, and I brought it out, and it's just a staple in my case now. You can come in and buy the Oreo fluff anytime. Tuesdays are rough on it. We make it on Wednesdays, so if we run out over the weekend, we won't have it until Wednesday. So listeners, beware. But I love this stuff myself. I take it home, I put it in the freezer, and I eat it like ice cream out of the tub.
I'm very excited to do that myself.
Yeah. It's pretty darn good.
So is the Oreo cupcake, is that almost like the McRib for McDonald's, where they could have it on the menu all the time and it would sell pretty well, but they take it off, and then when they bring it back, it's almost like an event. It's like an occasion, and people are like, oh shoot, the McRib's back, I got to go get that now. Is that kind of the thinking behind not having the Oreo cupcake in the regular rotation?
Well, it definitely generates some excitement.
For sure.
Oreo weeks are pretty high selling weeks for us. So we try to run them about once a month. People that follow us and my regulars, who I could name my regulars, they know when it's Oreo time. They know when 3 weeks have passed, and they start coming in and be like, hey, you're going to have Oreo again, right? I'm like, yeah, we'll have it soon. I don't tell anybody what my flavors of the week are going to be until I announce it on Tuesday. But my regulars know. They know when Oreo's coming.
I'm just imagining somebody at home, they just have it on their calendar, and they're just counting down the days until they can get Oreo cupcakes.
That's us. We have a calendar, a very large calendar. We track our weddings, and we track our flavors of the week on it. And very privileged few get access to that calendar to see what's coming up in the next month or two. But we've, just so you know, we've got it laid out for weeks ahead of time. We know what's coming. We're ready for it.
Gotcha. All right, so mostly to this point, we've discussed only cupcakes, but you are not Dave's Cupcakes of Omaha. You're Dave's Cakes of Omaha. So I want to talk cakes a little bit too. You kind of talked about that feeling earlier of what it feels like to take somebody's inspiration or dream for a cupcake and then make it for them. what are some of your favorite cake designs that you've been able to put out? Whether it's a crazy idea someone had or just a personal favorite, like what pings to the front of your brain?
It's just some of the cakes, and I'm gonna first and foremost, I'm gonna give so much credit to my team, to Emma for her work prepping, to Cheyenne for her finish work. My excitement anymore has transitioned into backing them. But over the years, I've been making cakes for so long now. Like have you seen the movie Alien with Sigourney Weaver?
Of course, yeah.
You know, the face hugger for that?
Someone requested that?
For a teenager's birthday.
Wow.
I did a full 3D face hugger coming out of an egg. The thing was probably about this big, coming out of the egg, ready to just latch on. And that is probably my favorite cake I've ever done. I did that when I was working at Cupcake Island, and I didn't know what I was doing. I promised this cake to this lady, and I had to figure it out, the mechanics, the engineering, the fondant, all of those things that I didn't have experience with. I had to figure out. I find that a lot of my career was I had to fake it before I caked it.
Nice.
And those were the early years of doing that and doing most of the stuff in buttercream and getting those designs locked in buttercream and not fondant and making it super smooth and clean. Kind of set me apart from some of my peers. And Omaha is ripe with decorators. I want to make that very clear. There are some fantastic talents in this city, and you can't go wrong. But that face hugger cake really stands out. My own personal groom's cake was a 3D Millennium Falcon.
Oh, that's awesome.
The engines lit up, and the gun and the dish on the top spun around. That's also another personal favorite of mine. But I'm getting old now. I'm no longer the young pup that I always was. My hands are getting shakier. My eyesight's getting a little dimmer. I've got to wear readers, and I've got arthritis in my hands and in my hip. So I have started to transition away from decorating, and I'm putting that work on my team. And like I said earlier, I'm really backing them now and developing them into the next talent and trying to help them reach their potential.
And clearly they have some great talent because somebody can go back through your Facebook. You just put up a post. I saw it 5 minutes before we hopped on here where you posted like a bunch of cakes that you'd recently finished. There's Marvels, like the Avengers. There's a cake one with a hammerhead shark. There's a black heart, which I'm sure there's a story behind that. But, they're really, really impressive. But I wanted to ask you, you brought up something really interesting that I would love to get your perspective on because I think most people don't have the perspective on this. My wife and I, we watch a lot of Food Network baking shows, and those can be hit or miss, here or there. But there is always a respect from the judges or the creators of the cake when they use natural things like buttercream, like you said, versus just covering it in fondant. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between those two things? For just the average listener right now who doesn't bake a lot or isn't crazy like my wife and I watching all these shows, what's the difference between those two things, and why is this a little bit more legit?
Buttercream is going to be really soft. It's very unforgiving to work with for high detail work. You got to be on it. You can't get it super smooth. You can't do super structural things with it because it's so kind of soft and soupy. Fondant is where you're going to get into those really crazy designs and shapes and 3D mechanics. So, people out there are watching those baking shows with you, and they're seeing all these crazy things that people are making out of cake and fondant. and they're coming to us wanting to do it. So we have had to pivot over the last 10 years or so from doing buttercream cakes to doing fondant cakes, because that's the demand now. So I'm not going to say that one is better than the other. They both have their place. I just know that I cut my teeth in this industry with buttercream.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like you said, for some of the more intricate stuff, you have to go with fondant.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just throw my personal opinion out there. Buttercream just tastes a lot better. I mean, there's no question.
No, there's no question about that.
I'll always appreciate a good buttercream. All right. Before we get into your background, there's one specific cake that I have to ask you about, and I think you probably know where I'm going with this. But on September 17th, 2023, you made a birthday cake for Nick Jonas.
Yes.
The Jonas Brothers were in town for a concert. Your cake was a part of that show.
Yes.
Before we even get into the design or anything like that, how did that happen? How does that come to be where you're making a cake for the Jonas Brothers?
Dumb luck.
That's the best kind of luck, usually.
Yeah, dumb luck. So we got a call. The show was on a Saturday. We got a call on Thursday from their manager saying, hey, Nick Jonas is in town. Jonas Brothers are playing. It's his birthday. We need a cake. And I'm on the phone like, yeah, okay. Right? Actually, I think Emma took the call, and she just kind of gave me a, Dave, you probably want to talk to this guy. I was like, all right. So I talked to him, and I was like, okay, buddy. Like, where's the punchline?
The Jonas Brothers are in town. Yeah.
Okay. And the more he started to talk, the more I realized that this was a legit thing. And he said, I'm getting the details for the design. I need flavors from you, what you can offer. So he gave me his phone number. We were texted back and forth, flavors that we could possibly do for him, what Nick's favorite flavors are, things like that. And we didn't have a design. We didn't get a design. And then we didn't get a design. So we didn't get the design until Friday, late morning, along with the flavors. So we didn't know what we were doing. But I already said yes, and I gave him a quote on it. So we were in the trenches. Everybody came together, and from Friday morning to Saturday afternoon, we had Nick Jonas's birthday cake done, completed, ready to rock and roll, and we had 2 or 3 weddings go out that day.
Oh my gosh.
So it was a big ask, but we stepped up and we got it done. My team did a great job on it. Everybody played a part in that cake, and it wasn't without its hiccups. There was a bumpy road getting that thing delivered and set up, but we got it done. And then we were at the show. They graciously gave us tickets to the show. We had it all set up in a back, like, kind of peaceful room for them. And I got a text from the manager saying, hey, we want to bring this thing out on the stage. You good? And I was like, yeah, we're good. Cheyenne, we're going back to work. So Emma and Harper stayed and watched the show while Cheyenne and I went backstage, and the cake had been sitting out for so long that it was really wobbly. It was 5 tiers, 3 layers of cake each tier. It was massive cake. It was so wobbly that we couldn't possibly move it as it was. So they brought out a platter, and they said, can you get the top 2 tiers off it so we can bring it on the stage? I said, 2? Let's make it 3. And Cheyenne just looked at me like, what are you doing? I was like, we're going big or we're going home. Like, this is happening. So we got the top 3 tiers off of that cake onto the platter, behind the scenes, running it behind all the people, behind the stage, around the back. They had 2 stages set up in the arena, and we were going to be on the auxiliary stage. We get we get to where we need to be. We're at the bottom of the stairs with the cake, and the manager's just like taking pictures of us, and he's so excited for us. He was such a great guy. His name was Dave too. We go to pick up the plate, and 2 guys come over and grab the cake from us and bring it up the stage. And Cheyenne and I were like, what? And we were just devastated. And they put it on the piano, and then the whole arena sang happy birthday to it. It was a couple of friends of Nick's. They grabbed the cake from us. Well, the manager, he felt bad too. And he's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And we were like, it's okay. It's okay. That's our cake. Like, that's our cake on stage in front of 20,000 people. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you go get it. We were like, what? He's like, you go get it. Go now. Now. And we just shuffled up the stairs, walked onto the stage, grabbed the cake off the piano.
Oh, my gosh.
And walked it back down the stairs. So we got to be on stage with Nick Jonas. We have a picture on our wall in the shop of us that the manager took, Dave took. And there's Nick Jonas in the background. There's Cheyenne and myself, just with big grins on our faces, holding this cake. And we'll never forget that moment.
You want to talk about having shaky hands. Holy cow.
It was wild.
Yeah.
It was wild. Just down stacking that cake to carrying it. It still weighed a ton. Yeah, it was quite the ride.
I would encourage people, go back on Dave's Instagram or Facebook and find pictures of this, because it's gorgeous. Like you said, it's an enormous cake. We're talking, I guess I can't tell from the scale in pictures, but very, very big. And it was pretty dark, like almost like a galaxy cake kind of almost.
Yeah, so Nick's wife sent the inspiration picture, and it was of this very dark night sky kind of feel with stars on it. And I grabbed one of our order forms, turned it over onto the back clean side, and I started sketching out what we were going to do. And that sketch is hanging on our wall in the shop. But Cheyenne's watching me do this. Okay, we're going to do this. We're going to get these balls that are going to represent the stars, and they're going to be swirling around the cake. But we're also going to be like looking down on like a lit up city through the clouds. So we had lights around the base of it, and we used rice paper that we soaked in water to make these little kind of shapes that were translucent, and we put those over the lights. And when you turn them on, gosh darn it, didn't look like you're looking down on a city at night from like an airplane. Yeah.
I love just being able to see the pride that you have in this thing that you created. Like, yeah, it was a very demanding ask, and I'm sure that there were times during that 48-hour period where you're getting the design on late Friday morning and delivering it Saturday morning / afternoon, however long that period was, where you were just like, this is insane. Why did we do this? I can't believe this is happening. But now you can look back on that, and it's just like, we did it.
Yeah,
we made a birthday cake for like one of the most famous people in the world, and got to be on stage with him in front of like tens of thousands of people. Like that's an opportunity of a lifetime.
Yeah, it was a trip.
Okay, I want to go back to the very beginning, because we've mentioned it a couple times. You've been in this industry for almost 20 years, but baking was not a part of your original plan.
Nope.
In fact, you got your college degree in studio art and painting and sculpture. How did you get into baking originally?
So, like you said, I got my degree in art. I graduated. I ended up moving back I graduated from a college in upstate New York. My parents lived in Omaha, so I moved back to Omaha to have kind of a safety net and be around family. Now, I must have missed the day in class when they taught the lesson that with an art degree, you're not going to get a job.
They don't teach that in college?
They must have. I missed the class. I must have been sick that day. So I was looking for work, and there was a local wholesaler that was opening a bakery that I had already gotten a job as a cashier at, and they were building a new membership club across the street. Bigger, nicer, fancier, and they were going to have a bakery in it. And they put a call out to all the staff and anybody who wanted to learn how to cake decorate. And I said, well, God, I could do that. I mean, I'm a classically trained artist. I could do that, no problem. Well, it turns out I had an aptitude for it. And I spent a few years there working and just doing basic buttercream work. And I wanted more, and I wasn't going to get more out of it. So I ended up going to Hy-Vee, where I met your sister, and I was able to do more there. But again, I kind of hit a ceiling where I wasn't going to learn anymore. They weren't really big into fondant at the time, and that was the next big thing coming out. You got to be able to be proficient in that. So I decided to get away from kind of the grocery scene and get into the small business scene. And that's when I met Ed Lefevre. And he took me in, and at his shop, I had free reign to do whatever I wanted. And like I said, I had to fake it before I caked it. And I did a lot of that. But I learned so much through trying new things and failing at those things. And it's very unforgiving. People want their cake when they want their cake. So it was a lot of long days of making just some of the coolest cakes I've ever done were there. And like I said, a lot of them were in buttercream, not fondant. But Ed was looking to sell, and he asked if I'd be interested. I said, gosh, I could see myself owning a cake shop. And the money didn't work. It didn't work. And that's kind of where Ed and I parted ways. And I regret that. Because he's a great man. And I was too young and too full of pride to see that I wasn't ready for it. So I moved on, and I worked at a couple other shops in town. And I just found that I was butting heads with the owners and my bosses at all these other shops, because we already talked about it at the beginning of the show, like my 3 core principles are quality, affordability, and a smile. And I wasn't finding that at the other shops I was working at. I'd find 1 or 2 of those things, but not all 3. You get customers complaining about customer service. We get customers complaining about dry cake. We get customers complaining about the cost. And I took all that to heart and continued to learn more and more about decorating. But I was also learning that the situation, the toxic environments that I was in, weren't for me, and it was really up to me to make the change. So that's when I decided that I was going to pull the trigger finally on opening a shop. Now, my wife and I have been saving for years for this. This was always
part of the plan,
but I was hemming and hawing here and there about it, and it finally came to a head, and it became very clear that it's time for me to do this. Just take the leap. So I quit my job, and I had 6 months to put this shop together. In those 6 months, like I said, I was a baking fool. I was making cake all the time. My neighbors loved me. I was tuning in those recipes, trying to get my core recipes, my vanilla, my pink champagne, my chocolate, get those dialed in to where they needed to be. And I knew I could grow from there, expand from those recipes, easy enough. Like I said, cake is easy. So it was those 6 months of not having a job, feeling the pressure financially, feeling the pressure from my wife to not be a bum, and make the shop happen, that things really started to fall into place.
So we've talked about the cake side of it, which is obviously extremely important. If you're going to own a cake shop, you better make some elite cake. But there's a lot more than just cake that goes into owning a business. You have to know how to hire and train employees. You got to be able to pass inspection. You have to figure out how to design the shop. You have to order equipment. You have to do all kinds of different stuff that has nothing to do with cake itself. How did you level yourself up in those non-cake areas to get ready to go from being an employee your whole career to being a business owner?
I've said it 3 times now. I faked it till I caked it. My wife is an accountant.
That helps.
That helps tremendously. She did a lot of work, and she's also half owner of the shop. So it's Dave's Cakes of Omaha, but Mrs. Dave's Cakes is a big part of it. She helped me get a list of everything together of what we need. Basically a giant grocery list of all the equipment we need. Here's our budget. Setting the budget was critical, and working under that budget, because we threw so much of our savings at this, but we still needed a business loan to make it happen. And learning that was on the fly, but so important. And the lessons I learned in those 6 months of getting the shop together and designing it and everything, just great lessons learned. Originally, it was just going to be me and maybe Cheyenne if she wanted to join me. So I was going to be doing all the work, but it became very clear right out the gate that I needed help. And Cheyenne was like, let's do this thing. And I was like, yeah, it's on. It's on like Donkey Kong now. So I got Cheyenne on, and Cheyenne and I worked until about April, and we realized that May was coming up, and we need help. So we had
That's graduation.
It's graduation season, wedding season. We were very fortunate to have some people early out the gate put their faith in us to do their weddings. And we did 42 weddings last year, which was respectable. Yeah. We've got 90 on our calendar this year so far, and it's not even May yet at the time of this recording. So we're doubling our output for weddings, and we brought Emma in. And then we needed more help. So we brought Harper in, and we headhunted all of them. Like Cheyenne and I sat down and said, this is who we need. This is why we need them. And this is what they can become. Because like I said earlier, we're developing these people. So Harper came in as a dishwasher. Now she's doing that still. She is icing cupcakes, and I hope very soon that she's going to be icing cakes and prepping cakes. And then I have to hire a dishwasher. So there's going to be transition in the company for people. And that's my goal, to everybody step up. I want Emma to be doing the cakes that Cheyenne's doing in the next year or two. But she's got a long road ahead of her, and she's got a lot of work to do, and she knows it, but she's up to it.
It's become very clear to me during this conversation that you get a lot of fulfillment in developing people, in identifying talent and helping them nurture and grow. What is it about that you think gives you such joy?
So, little known fact about me, I played roller derby for Omaha's men's team, and I coach for the Omaha Roller Girls, now Omaha Roller Derby. They've rebranded. I take a lot of pride in seeing other people meet their potential. If I've helped, clearly that's where the pride comes in. But I love seeing people do their best and be the best at what they do. So whether it's sports, whether it's cake decorating, you name it, somebody operating at a high level just does it for me. So obviously I want my team to do that. I want them to be that. and meet their potential. Find out what the potential is. A lot of people go through life not knowing what their potential is. Well, I want to see it happen.
All right. Take me back to Saturday, January 2021 of 2023. This is your grand opening. You sold over 1,000 cupcakes in a day.
Yep.
When I bring that date up, what comes first to your mind?
Just anxiety. Pure, unadulterated anxiety. It was just me working in the shop, opening this thing I've been dreaming of for years, working so hard towards, not knowing what was going to happen. I didn't know if we were going to have one or two people come into the shop. I didn't know if we were going to have a line out the door. I brought up samples. My friends and family put shouts out on Facebook, on social media, like, come check this place out. And I baked 1,000 cupcakes, rolling the dice. And started off a little slow. It was okay. It was all right. New shop. What's going on? But by the end of the day, I had a line out the door. I wasn't prepared. Cheyenne wasn't with me at the time, but she'd already agreed to come work for me. And she was still putting her 2 weeks in at her old job. She left that job at the end of her shift and came and helped me to ice up cupcakes and get them in the case for people to do. Like, I can't thank Cheyenne enough. My father-in-law came out and just hung out and supported me. My dad came and helped ice up cupcakes and get stuff out. We were so busy. The day flew by. And at the end of it, I did a count. I was like, I sold 1,000 cupcakes today in one day. This is wild. We're onto something. And then it happened. I started getting customers coming into the shop saying, oh, we saw you on Omaha Food Lovers. I was like, oh, cool. What's that? And they're like, what do you mean, what's that? It's like, is it a good or a bad thing? I don't know. Like, what's going on? And they're like, well, there are food groups on social media, and there's foodies out there, and they're on to you. I was like, that's good. And they're like, it's great. It's absolutely great. And then things just took off even more. And I can't say thank you enough to Omaha Food Lovers, the other food groups out there, for identifying me and saying, come check this guy out. He took a big chance opening his own shop. Check it out. And the volume of customers I've had come in from that, still to this day, is astounding to me.
Because that word of mouth can make or break a shop, especially one that is small like yours and that isn't in a prominent location. Like, there aren't a lot of people that are going to be able to drive by and see you and be like, oh, cupcakes, I should stop in there. You need to have that word of mouth.
Yeah.
But I think what you did that was smart was you were able to generate buzz on that first day. People came in, they tasted the product, they saw that, like we talked about off the top, this isn't just frosting, it's not just filler. There's some serious cake skills going on here. And then, yeah, boom, you get that on social media, and you get a couple good pictures, a couple raving testimonials, and the wildfire can just catch.
Yep.
And
it was a perfect storm, Dan.
I'm very excited that happened for you. So it sounds like this happened very quickly, but I would love to get your answer on this.
Yeah.
You opened originally saying, we're going to be a cake shop that's going to offer cupcakes. At what point did you realize that was probably going to flip and you were going to be a cupcake shop that also did custom cakes?
By May.
So a few months.
So it took a little time. Cheyenne and I were doing cakes together, and then it was Cheyenne doing cakes because I had to bake more. And I was baking more. I was getting them farther away from the cakes, and I was baking more and more cupcakes. And it got to the point where we sold 2,000 in a day. And then it became very clear that the draw was cupcakes. And over 100,000 later, like, we're still doing it, still doing the cupcakes. And I'm not going to pull those off the menu. At the end of the year, I had a conversation with my accountant, Mrs. Dave's Cakes, and we were looking at, do we need to adjust prices or anything like that? Like, gosh, we sold 100,000 cupcakes. If we increased it by this much, we could have made this much. How wild is that? But then it really became clear to us, like, no, that's not the point. Like, quality, affordability, and a smile. The affordability is just as important. So we didn't make any changes to our pricing this year for cupcakes. Custom cakes went up a little bit. Well, that's just because of the labor.
Well, and food costs.
And food
like
costs.
Ingredient costs have gone way up too.
But if you know how to shop, you can get deals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I won't ask you to give away any of your secrets. That's not what this podcast is for. But you mentioned the 100,000 cupcakes in your first year.
Yeah.
That was a goal that you set fairly early on, going back and looking at your social media, and there were updates on it. It's not like this is a goal that you guys had just kind of tucked back in the office where it's like, okay, if we get here, we'll make a big deal out of it. No, you publicized it, and you were like, we want to sell 100,000 cupcakes in our first year. And it's, like I said, it's one thing to make that goal. It's another to put it out there on a billboard and be like, this is what we're shooting for. Yep. And then you did it.
Yep.
But what was your thinking behind making that so public and really being like, this is it, we're going for it?
I'm a real transparent guy. I will tell you how it is, no matter the conversation. And it became pretty clear early on. I was like, wouldn't it be fun if we did a little contest, like a little giveaway? What if we had people guess how many cupcakes we sold? And then we could give them like a gift card or something. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds good. Because we were trying, since the beginning, we've been trying to engage with the public on social media. And I think we've got it down to an art now. But those early attempts, I'm like, whoa, let's do a contest. So we did the contest, and it was something like 18,000 cupcakes. But I started to look at that number and where we were in the year and extrapolate that over the course of a year, and I was like, I bet you we could hit 100,000. Let's do it. Let's go all in on this. If we're selling cupcakes at the rate we're selling cupcakes, let's do it, and let's bring the public in. Like, that's as much as I love people, I want them to be as much a part of it as I can. So that's why through social media I let people into our kitchen. And that buzz just started growing and snowballing. And people were excited, and people would come in and ask me, hey, where you at? And I'd be like, oh man, we're at 35,000 cupcakes now. Like, that's awesome. Keep going. Like, yeah, that's the only thing we can do is just keep going.
That's the plan.
And gosh, I can't tell you what a good feeling it was. We hit that goal on January 6th. So a couple weeks before our anniversary, we nailed the 100,000 mark. And I'll tell you right now, we're at 135,101 at the time of this recording. We're on track for 200,000.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. You've clearly built something really, really awesome. We're getting up against it on time, and I'm so disappointed because you just talked about social media. I want to talk about your social media so much. I wanted to talk about the flavor pairings with Heavy Brewing, give a shout out to them and figure out how that partnership came to be and how you pair cupcakes and beer. We might have to do like a return episode here because there's a lot more that we have to talk about. But I got to get you out of here on this question. I mean, we're talking about a business that is still very young, less than a year and a half old.
Yep.
And you have captured this market. Like, people know Dave's Cakes. It is an established brand, probably one of the best-known bakeries in Omaha now. As you look to the future of your shop, what do you see as the future for Dave's Cakes?
That's a great question. I don't know that I have a very great answer for you. Right now, my goal is to pay my staff, pay my rent, pay my utilities, buy ingredients, and take home a modest salary myself. And we're doing it. Being as affordable as we are, we're doing it. That's the goal. Now, I want to pay off my bank loan, and we'll have that taken care of in a year and a half, and then we'll start making some real money. But the future, it's Dave's Cakes of Omaha. I'll let that sink in for you.
Okay.
Where could that go?
We'll just leave it at that. Yeah. I mean, people, as we've discussed, you've probably heard of Dave's Cakes at this point, if not experienced them on your own, so you probably don't need this endorsement from me. I'm going to give it anyway. These cakes are fantastic. Like, just sitting here and being able to smell these cupcakes for the last hour has been intoxicating. I fully plan on going home and consuming at least one right away and hope that my wife forgives me for not leaving them all for her. But, I mean, it does come down to the cake, and you can taste that immediately. You know that this is not just some normal cupcake that you're getting, but this is something that somebody has spent 6 months, 20 years, and then an additional 6 months of just heads down developing a special recipe. And you've created a cupcake, you've created a brand that is clearly something that's very special, Dave. And I mean, I thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and just sharing a little bit of time with us and telling us the story of how all this came to be. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. I really appreciate you. It's been my absolute pleasure.
Omaha, as always, thanks for reading with us.